Am I the a-hole for inviting my oldest daughter to Christmas Eve dinner but banning her cheating boyfriend? Now she's refusing to come at all. Hey Reddit. Family has always been the cornerstone of my life. My wife and I have been married for over 30 years, and we've raised 3 wonderful children. Our 2 sons, Daniel and Max, are the jokesters of the family, always quick to lighten the mood. Then there's Emily, our eldest, and honestly, the one we've always leaned on. She's ambitious, thoughtful, and the first to offer a helping hand when someone's in need. 2 years ago, Emily introduced us to Jake, her boyfriend. At first, we were thrilled for her. Jake seemed like a good guy, he had a steady job, was polite, and appeared to care deeply for Emily. He would bring little gifts for her and even brought flowers for my wife the first time we met him. It was clear he was trying to make a good impression, and honestly, we were all rooting for their relationship to succeed. But as the months went by, little red flags started to appear. It began with Emily pulling away from us. She would come to family dinners but wouldn't stay long, often citing that Jake needed her for something or other. When she was with us, she seemed distracted and quieter than usual. At first, I thought it was just the stress of balancing her demanding job and her relationship, but then one of her closest friends reached out to me. Her friend revealed that Jake had been unfaithful to Emily, not once but multiple times. He had been caught messaging a coworker and even meeting up with her behind Emily's back. When Emily found out, she was heartbroken, but Jake had managed to convince her that he was sorry and it would never happen again. He even suggested couples therapy to work on their relationship, which Emily saw as a sign that he was serious about changing. When Emily finally told us the truth, I was furious. Furious at Jake for hurting her and, admittedly, frustrated that Emily chose to stay with him. But I kept my opinions to myself because, ultimately, she's an adult and can make her own decisions. Unfortunately, things didn't improve. Jake didn't cheat again as far as we know, but his behavior took a toxic turn. He started isolating Emily from her friends, claiming they didn't support their relationship. He'd guilt-trip her for spending time with us, saying she should prioritize him instead. My wife and I tried to talk to her about it, but she always defended him, saying we didn't understand the progress he was making. This year, as we prepared for Christmas, the situation came to a head. Christmas Eve dinner is a big deal in our family. It's the one night we all come together, no matter how busy our lives get, to celebrate, exchange gifts, and enjoy each other's company. My wife and I were looking forward to having everyone under one roof, but we couldn't ignore the elephant in the room, Jake. After much discussion, my wife and I decided that Jake wasn't welcome this year. It wasn't an easy decision, but I couldn't stomach the idea of having him at our table, pretending everything was fine, after all the pain he's caused Emily. I wanted this Christmas to be peaceful and drama-free, something I didn't think was possible with Jake present. When I called Emily to tell her about the plans, I tried to be as gentle as possible. I explained that we loved her and wanted her to be there but that Jake wouldn't be invited. I told her it wasn't about punishing her but about creating a safe and comfortable environment for everyone. Her reaction caught me off guard. At first, she was silent. Then she started crying and said we were being unfair. She accused us of not respecting her choices and claimed that Jake was doing his best to be a better person. She said excluding him was essentially excluding her, and that if he wasn't welcome, she wouldn't come either. I tried to reason with her, but she hung up before I could finish. Since then, she hasn't answered any of our calls or texts. My wife is heartbroken and keeps second-guessing our decision. Our sons are on our side. They think Jake is toxic and that Emily deserves better, but they're also worried about how this will affect our relationship with her in the long run. To make matters worse, Jake found out about the situation and sent me a long, condescending email. In it, he accused me of being controlling and manipulative, claiming I was trying to ruin their relationship. He said I was driving a wedge between Emily and the family and that if I truly cared about her, I would accept him for who he is. I haven't responded to his email because, frankly, I don't see the point. But his words have been weighing on me. Am I being controlling? Should I have just sucked it up and invited him for the sake of keeping the peace? On one hand, I feel like this is a boundary worth setting. Jake's behavior has been nothing but harmful, and I don't want to normalize or enable that by pretending everything is okay. On the other hand, I hate the thought of Emily spending Christmas alone, feeling like we don't support her. The situation has left me torn. Part of me wants to reach out to Emily and apologize, even if it means compromising my principles, just to get her to come. But another part of me feels like this is the tough love she needs to realize she deserves better. Christmas Eve is just days away, and I still don't know what to do. My wife and I have been trying to carry on with our preparations, but there's a cloud hanging over everything. Every time I walk past the gifts we've wrapped for Emily, I feel a pang of guilt. I'm writing this because I need an outside perspective. Am I the asshole for excluding Jake? Should I have handled this differently? Or was I right to stand my ground, even if it means risking my relationship with Emily? Update. After posting about my dilemma, I spent hours reading through the responses. It was overwhelming, but the comments gave me a lot to think about. Many of you supported my decision to set boundaries, while others suggested I was being unfair by forcing Emily to choose between her family and her boyfriend. Both perspectives stuck with me. With Christmas Eve looming, I knew I had to make one last attempt to reach out to Emily. I called her and asked if we could talk. This time, I focused entirely on her feelings rather than rehashing my issues with Jake. I told her that I missed her, that we all missed her, and how much her absence would hurt us during the holidays. I also apologized if the way we handled things made her feel alienated. Emily listened quietly, which gave me hope. But when she finally spoke, her voice was trembling. She said, "I understand why you're upset with Jake, but it feels like you're not giving him a chance. He's been trying so hard to make things right, and by excluding him, it feels like you're rejecting me, too." I told her that wasn't the case, but I couldn't pretend to support someone who had caused her so much pain. I reminded her of how much she'd distanced herself from her friends and family since being with Jake, but I made sure to emphasize that our love for her hadn't changed. Her response was heartbreaking. She said, "If Jake can't come, then I can't either. I just can't celebrate knowing he's being left out." I tried to convince her otherwise, but she had made up her mind. When we hung up, I felt a mix of sadness and frustration. It felt like Jake was winning, driving an even bigger wedge between Emily and her family. Another update. Christmas Eve came, and as much as we tried to keep up the holiday spirit, it was impossible to ignore Emily's absence. My wife had been holding on to hope that she'd show up at the last minute, but as the hours ticked by, it became clear she wasn't coming. Daniel and Max, our sons, did their best to keep things lively. They took over the kitchen, cracking jokes and playing Christmas music. For a while, it felt like a normal holiday celebration. But when we sat down for dinner, the empty chair at the table was a glaring reminder of how fractured our family had become. After dinner, my wife went to the living room and quietly cried. She had been strong through all of this, but seeing her like that broke my heart. I sat down beside her, and we talked about Emily. My wife confessed that she felt like we'd made the wrong choice, that maybe we should have just let Jake come for one night to avoid all this. I reassured her that we made the best decision we could at the time. I reminded her of how toxic Jake's influence had been on Emily and how we couldn't compromise our values just to avoid conflict. It was a tough conversation, but by the end, we both agreed that we needed to stay strong and give Emily the space she needed to figure things out. Later that night, Emily finally texted. Her message was long, and while it was clear she was still upset, there was a glimmer of hope. She wrote, "I'm sorry for how things turned out. I love you guys, but I need time to process everything. I feel like I'm stuck between two worlds, and it's really hard. I hope we can move past this eventually." It was bittersweet. I was relieved she still wanted a relationship with us, but it hurt knowing she felt so torn. What really shocked me, though, was something Daniel told me later. He said Emily had confided in him weeks earlier that Jake didn't even want to come to Christmas Eve dinner. Apparently, Jake had said things like, "Your family doesn't like me anyway, so what's the point?" Hearing that only solidified my belief that excluding him was the right choice. If he didn't even want to come, why should we bend over backward to include him? Final update. A few weeks passed, and as the new year rolled around, Emily reached out to us again. She asked if we could meet for coffee, just the three of us. My wife and I jumped at the chance. When we met, Emily looked nervous but determined. She started by apologizing for missing Christmas Eve and admitted that she regretted how everything had played out. She said, "I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I realize now how much this has affected our relationship." She went on to explain that she felt trapped, torn between her family and Jake. She admitted she had been trying so hard to make her relationship work that she hadn't stopped to consider how much she was sacrificing in the process. I told her there was no need to apologize. I reassured her that our love for her had never wavered and that we just wanted her to be happy. My wife echoed my sentiments, and we both emphasized that she deserved a partner who respected her, supported her, and brought out the best in her. Then came the moment I wasn't expecting. Emily opened up about her doubts about Jake. She admitted that things hadn't been great between them for a long time. She said he had become increasingly controlling and that she often felt like she was walking on eggshells around him. She said, "I love him, but I don't know if this is the kind of love I want anymore." It was a heartbreaking thing to hear, but it was also a moment of hope. For the first time, Emily seemed to be questioning the relationship on her own terms. I didn't push her to make any decisions but told her we would support her no matter what. A week later, Emily called to tell us she had broken up with Jake. She said it had been one of the hardest decisions she'd ever made, but she realized she couldn't keep sacrificing her happiness for the sake of the relationship. She thanked us for standing by her and admitted that our tough love during the holidays had been a wake-up call. Since then, things have been better than I could have hoped. Emily has been spending more time with us, reconnecting with her friends, and focusing on herself. She's laughing more, smiling more, and seems genuinely happier. Looking back, I don't regret the decision we made about Christmas Eve. It was one of the hardest things we've ever had to do as parents, but it ultimately led to a turning point for Emily. She found the strength to walk away from a toxic relationship, and our family has come out stronger because of it. To everyone who shared advice and support on my original post, thank you. Your words helped me navigate one of the toughest parenting challenges I've ever faced.